Apple is likely to shift 18% of its global iPhone production to India by 2025. Now, the road ahead is not very smooth. Krishna joins us on the bulletin. Krishna, good morning to you. 18% is a substantial part of the business, mainly on the back of the shifting geopolitical gears why India has now become a hub for Apple, why India is in the target range of Apple for producing 18% of its total output. And essentially, all of that would mean that India will become more and more important for production facilities, and states that we're looking at primarily would be Telangana and also Tamil Nadu. Both of them have been in constant loggerheads as to who's going to attract more FDI from Apple.
Absolutely, and I would call it Apple's new mantra or shloka, as you want to call it. It's called India or Bharat. That's really the case because it already manufactures a host of iPhone 13, iPhone 12, iPhone SE models out of India with its partners, Foxconn, Pegatron, and Wistron. Now the idea, currently, Shweta, 7% of the global iPhone production 7% of all iPhones manufactured by Apple comes out of India. It is looking to take that number to 18% in less than 2 years by 2025. That's what reports are saying. And there's a reason for this, Shweta, and that is because it wants to meet the targets under the PLI scheme of the Indian government, the production linked incentive scheme of the Indian government. And to meet those targets, is the reason why Apple is sort of in a hurry to increase the number of production of iPhones in India, and also, of course, as you rightly mentioned, the changing geopolitical sands. Clearly they want to move as much out of China as possible. That's already been the case. It's already opened 2 to 3 stores up, Apple stores in India. So Apple is doing the 360 from manufacturing to sales. Its next a new wave or the new world for Apple is definitely India, which is looking to explore and conquer even. And bear in mind, already 50% of India's smartphone exports is contributed by Apple. India exported about $11 billion worth of smartphones, out of which 50% of its value, don't think about the number, 50% of the $11 billion worth of smartphone exports from India belongs to Apple. That's the amount of importance that Apple has. But there will be a little bit of a problem for Apple going ahead as far as its Make in India plans are concerned, Make iPhones in India plans are concerned. And that is because, according to that very PLI scheme, there has to be domestic value addition, or DVA, domestic value addition of the vendors who supply Apple to the tune of 30%. That's the target. That's what the PLI scheme mandates. Currently, Apple's vendors have domestic value addition, value created, while manufactured in India, just about 15%, 15%. It should ideally be 30%. So Apple has to make up for that delta. It has to, going forward, make sure vendors are able to touch that 30% domestic value addition criteria, so that Apple can continue manufacturing in India. And also bear in mind that Apple is looking to expand its not just iPhone manufacturing, but of course the whole portfolio of products that Apple makes. It's trying to move as much of it as possible to India, not just the iPhones, Shweta. But then again, it will be a difficult road meeting this local sourcing, the domestic value addition criteria, because currently, just now, it just touched 20% for non-Apple smartphone production in the country, 20%, whereas the scheme mandates 30%, and Apple is currently at 15%. So it has to make up for it, even as it has ambitious plans to make more and more in India, Shweta.
Okay. I want to quickly also bring in Amit here at this point in time. Amit, the story is all the more striking, Apple's success story, because Apple, let's not forget, started its operations in India just about 22 months ago. So the time frame within which it has achieved its success in terms of about 50% of the total $11 billion smartphone exports from India, the figure, when contextualized in the time frame that it has done so, is all the more interesting.
Very interesting, and it is within 2 years of the PLI scheme also. It has gone from 110 billion exports of Apple in 2022 to 400 billion rupees in 2023. They have reached 1 billion exports per month already. That's it, and that's going to accelerate further. And like Krishna said, it is going to expand its product base that is going to manufacture India. There's already news that AirPods are going to be next after iPhones. So yeah, and that would probably increase linkages. And as far as Indian component, I hope with Tata's coming in as one of the suppliers, taking over the Indian arm of one of their suppliers, that would also be met pretty soon. That target of 30%
Right.
of Indian DEA. So I think and it'll be a case study story for other manufacturers, I hope, in the electronics sector to take on.
Absolutely. And as far as localization is concerned, Krishna, Apple's vendors have already started localizing chargers, batteries. How difficult will it be to reach that 30% mark? Okay, I don't think we have Krishna with us at this point in time. Let me take that question to Karthik. Karthik, I understand that 30% is an uphill task, but as Krishna pointed out, we've already reached a DVA of average 20%. Apple and it's done all of that in less than 2 years' time. So how difficult will it be for Apple, do you think? How difficult is that journey to reach the 30% DVA?
See, it's definitely not easy, but is it impossible? I don't think so. What ails India's manufacturing, I think, in the short run is largely going to be batteries and semiconductors. So these are unlikely to constitute, hopefully, less than or more than 30% of what is required as components to go into Apple. But I think semiconductors is definitely one place where we are going to fall short. And batteries also, so far, the dependence on China for batteries of all kinds is going to be a challenge. Apart from that, I think everything else, from screens to other precious metals, minerals that go into the screen, the metal, all of that should not be a problem at all. And going forward, I think even semiconductors, I mean, the government is trying to incentivize the whole semiconductor industry and chip manufacturing also in India. But that's not going to be, something that can be achieved in the short run. And I give it a minimum of another 5 years or so before we would be able to start rolling out perhaps the first set of real usable multi-purpose semiconductors of our own. Until then, dependence, of course, on China, on Taiwan, on other parts of the world on semiconductors is definitely going to be there.
Absolutely, semiconductor, and that's also a story that we discussed here, how much we have achieved, what strides we've made in semiconductor business. We have an incentive earmarked to the tune of $10 billion to make semiconductors in India, and hopefully some bids there will come through as far as semiconductor business is concerned. But Karthik, for the benefit of our viewers and also essentially how much it's going to help them if Apple were to make in India, we discussed this, and I understand you're of the belief that price point may not go down for Apple products, even if it manufactures, more than 20% for India. There could be some incentives to customers, Apple customers, people who are hoping to buy Apple products, if Apple were to increase its share of business in India.
I hate to break your heart, Shweta, but I doubt that's going to happen. See, Apple is a premium product. It's not as much about the cost of manufacturing. I doubt cost of manufacturing would be any different for a Samsung or for any other good quality smartphone. Of course, a lot goes into the R&D, and that is some place where Apple tries to maximize. A lot goes into the design, which is again, something that adds premiumness to Apple's products. But components that go into A cell phone or B cell phone are pretty much the same. Of course, the grading of those products will be different. So the quality of glass used, the quality of metal used, the quality of paint used, the sensors in the camera used, all those are definitely much better in the case of Apple, which gives them the premium edge. But it's not as much about the cost of producing one phone that determines how much you want to sell it at. In the case of premium products, it is the value that you think the consumer is deriving out of that product, and how do you maximize that value. So it's a value game, and it's not really a cost game for Apple, and hence at the cost of repeating to break your heart and many other hearts across the country.
You know, more
I
than mine,
doubt there's going
Krishna's heart, Karthik. More than mine, you're breaking
I doubt
Krishna's
there's going
heart.
to be any change, downward change in prices. If anything, with every new model launching, prices are only going to continue to go up.
Okay. Krishna?
Well, it doesn't break my heart at all because what I'm looking for is more of a thriving Apple ecosystem, hardware and software that Indians can access. Because already so many Indians have bought iPhones and so many Indians are going to buy iPhones. If they can have Apple stores where they can take their iPhone to, and if they can, they can have an entire ecosystem around Apple. Because so far we've been people sitting in India hoping for something to come out of the US. Even phones, once upon a time, we were looking for those, break-in phones which we can get from Dubai or from the US to a cousin or a relative. Things have changed so much since iPhone, the first iPhone 3GS was launched back in the year 2008, Shweta. So much has changed. 3 stores in India. When I bought the first 3GS, everybody made fun of me. They're like, if this breaks, where are you going to take this? What's going to happen to you? Why do you Apple guys do this?
You're rich,
Why do you
Krishna.
spend so much money?
I
You
think
should
the,
buy
bot-
milk
but the
because
bottom
milk
line is
healthy.
you've got the
I
money,
know
Krishna.
comparisons used to happen, but none of that can happen right now because despite the price, and the good thing about the price point is that Apple has learned to break down its price points. Because there is an iPhone, if there's an iPhone 14, there's an iPhone 14 mini, and there's an iPhone 14, which is a 2 budget phones in Apple's category. And then comes the Pro, and then comes the Pro Max. So it's done great product differentiation, but as Karthik was rightly pointing out, it's not about the price. People want to pay the premium. People want to tell other people that they are capable of paying the premium to buy Apple.
Okay. Okay, Krishna, talk about yourself. You want to pay the premium. You have people like Amit who's asking his friend to get a brand new iPhone. I think he has one.
Taking on from Krishna's example of relatives, so I bought an iPhone 14 Pro Max for 98, when in India it's available for 1.4. So yeah, that is still there.
Okay, and I want to basically understand why is that, primarily, and
Apple
both,
store in India,
right.
And in case there's a problem, that's the beauty of it all. Once upon a time, if Amit were to do that, if all people who bought iPhone 3, iPhone 4, iPhone 5 through their relatives in Dubai and the US and elsewhere, once that jailbreak phone, remember that word, that was called jailbreak. Once you get that jailbreak phone and something goes wrong with it, you can't do squat. It's over. It's all over. But now you have an Apple store to go to.
Okay. But I want to understand this, for the benefit of our viewers too. Why exactly do you buy an Apple iPhone from the US, you get it from Dubai, you get it from, other parts of the world, and it's cheaper as opposed to when you're going out and buying in India? And that's why, the question whether, because it's not manufactured, the majority of it's not made in India, is that the reason why it's expensive here in India? And will that then go away once Apple looks at India as its manufacturing hub? Karthik here disagrees with me.
Taxation, Shweta, one simple word, taxation. We tax Apple.
All right.
Okay,
I'll
we
take
seem to
over
have
from where
lost Karthik there,
talking
but I
about.
think taxation,
Shweta,
Krishna, yes.
Absolutely. I was about to say that taxation is definitely an issue, and also purchasing power parity, as far as, how many Indians can afford a phone of that value with that, with the value of the rupee, bear in mind. Because what goes into the iPhone is dollar benchmarked, and we are buying it here in rupee. So there is already that delta that we need to account for, and of course, the taxation that foreign manufacturers and foreign players in India have to go through that Karthik was talking about. But here is the good story. Despite all of that, I never, in 2023, when we discussed the pricing of the iPhone, it's a little confusing for me, because if it was the pricing that was the deterrent, people would have stopped buying iPhones by now. And now I think salaries have only gone up since the iPhones were first launched. People's propensity and people's aspirations have only gone up since the first iPhone was launched. So to me, it's not a question of pricing anymore. It's always a question of the ecosystem. Can you buy all Apple products, get them serviced? If there is a problem, take them somewhere. Which Apple fans for the longest time, for decades, did not in India. People who bought the iMac, forget the phones. People who bought the iMac computers had nowhere to take it to if there was a problem with it. That's why only one of them took it to Tim Cook on the day of the launch of the first store in Mumbai. So, those problems go away. And those are very important. I mean, think about it. How did a Microsoft Windows become so famous and those computers become famous? Because there's a problem, we could take it somewhere. There was more trust, there was more reliability. There's an environment that supports it. So Apple is moving towards that. As far as manufacturing is concerned, well, I think it's purely a prerogative of Apple to
Okay.
make sure it is manufacturing from a place where it's safe, from all the global regulations, it's cost-wise effective. All these factors make India a great place to manufacture for Apple. So there is no rocket science over here as to why Apple wants to manufacture more and more out of India. It's not about bringing down the
Krishna,
prices of phones
my
in
basic
India.
question also to Karthik at this point in time, and we lost Karthik while he was speaking. Karthik, if it was about taxation and import duty when we were importing iPhone, now that we are making in India, shouldn't there be less taxes?
No, it wasn't about import duty. It was largely what is your GST on white goods? What is your GST on electronics? And that is what was higher in case of cell phones. And by value of percentage, a higher priced product is going to add a higher absolute value on the same GST rate, let's say across a Samsung or a Vivo or a Xiaomi. A more expensive phone is going to add a higher GST, and hence the price accentuates even further.